when people change their breakfast first, it kind of frames their mindset for the rest of the day. If people try to change their dinner first and eat kind of a not so healthy breakfast and not so healthy lunch, they're going to be far more likely to go off plan and eat a not so healthy dinner.
Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we are coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg in Schaumburg, Illinois. Now, at Muscle Activation Schaumburg, we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. Your health is one of the biggest influencers of the quality and quantity of time that you have. And while there are many aspects of health, our expertise is exercise. Exercise has been proven time and again to not only improve your health, but also increase your longevity and improve your quality of life. But we know that exercise is not the only piece of the puzzle, and today we are going to be discussing one of the major pieces of the puzzle when it comes to utilizing exercise and other healthy lifestyle habits and actually adhering to those things in which you want to implement in your life. So for that, we are bringing you an amazing guest, none other than my brother, Tony Cates. Tony, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. So the reason for our listeners, the reason why we're bringing Tony on today is because Tony has authored one book on behavior change. He's also in the process of authoring a second book on behavior change. And while he was going through his MBA program, the focus of his program was studying behavioral trends within marketplace and understanding the behavioral trends that consumers would go through and how to change the behavioral trends of consumers in order to help influence the business marketplace. So he has an extensive background in understanding the psychology behind behavior change. And for right now, that is so important. If you are looking to set New Year's resolutions, if you're looking to set goals for the next year and you know that you're going to have to change your day in and day out behaviors, listen to this episode, okay? Listen up, because he's going to have some great advice on how you can do exactly that. So Tony, why don't you intro yourself a little bit further, kind of tell us more about your background and how you got into this kind of behavioral change field.
Absolutely. So I started off doing personal training similar to what you did. I gradually transitioned into more nutrition coaching. I ended up reading countless books on nutrition, studying a lot of interviews with nutritional experts. I coached several hundred people through personal training and through one-on-one nutrition coaching. And basically, I got to the point where I realized no matter how good of a nutrition plan I wrote for someone, it didn't really matter if they weren't able to follow it, if they weren't able to make the behavioral changes needed to consistently apply the new eating style. So I realized I needed to improve my ability to get people to buy in and change their behavior instead of focusing on learning more about the nuances of nutrition. So I spent about a year and a half studying, almost exclusively studying behavioral change, and started applying a lot of the concepts in my one-on-one coaching. Lo and behold, the compliance rate went up and people started achieving better results. So I knew I was on the right track. Then I got to the point where basically I would take everyone through the initial 12-week kind of introductory process where we would determine their goals, figure out why they wanted to make the behavioral change, different things like that. And I realized I could streamline the process by kind of creating it into a manual that I would give to people, have them go through this process before they would start working with me. Once they kind of got the details done and fine-tuned, then they would come to me for the more advanced coaching. Eventually, I created enough content that I was like, wow, I could probably just kind of put this together into a book. So I went through with that and I created a book called The Self-Made Diet, which was basically a combination of nutrition sciences and the process of behavioral change.
Well, you said a couple great things in there, which I love, because as trainers, we kind of come in different categories. Charlie and I come in the category of we like to geek out on the science of exercise and anatomy and physics. And I mean, I kind of have always thought of it like, hopefully people like me enough that they just kind of comply with whatever I tell them. So it's really cool and exciting and pretty unique that you've created and have learned about different processes of which to actually help people make that behavior change, rather than, I think a lot of trainers turn to yelling or ultra motivational like sayings or, quotes that keep their clients going. But I think at the end of the day, it's the practicality of having the skills to be able to do this change without having like someone nagging your ear all the time or having to text you in the morning to remember to do all your things. So that's really cool. Yeah, and I'm excited we get to dive in a little bit more.
Absolutely. I mean, that's such a great point, because I think for those of us that actually enjoy exercising, whether you want to call it naturally or because we started at a younger age and so we've kind of developed a really strong affinity for exercise, the idea of trying to change your behavior in order to incorporate something like exercise or incorporate good eating habits or incorporate stress management or whatever it is, that's a very foreign idea to a lot of us. I think in probably a similar manner as exercising on a regular basis may be a foreign idea to other people. So to take a step back and to kind of zoom out and say, hey, you know what? Wow, there are people out there that actually don't like exercise as much as I do. There are people out there that maybe aren't as compliant, just whatever you would call them, whether it's like strong-willed or whatever, with their nutrition as I would be. And then, wow, I actually need to relearn all this stuff just to make the other stuff that I've already spent a ton of time learning, just to make that effective. That's a tremendous change. That's a tremendous shift. And that has to be, that takes a lot of maturity. And I think that takes a lot of guts to be able to say, well, I've spent a lot of time studying this, but right now it's just flat out not good enough if I don't have this other piece. So I need to spend time studying that. So one, what was that process like? But two, kind of talk to us what the process was like of having clients that you knew you could try as best you could to communicate with about the things they should be doing, but they just flat out weren't quite getting it.
So kind of before I started personal training, one thing that Dad told me is you can't live people's lives for them. You have to try to lead them in a way that they want to change and that they want to kind of live a life that's better for them. I would say the first step of behavioral change is you have to have some type of pain in your life. You're never going to have pain, or you're never going to have change without pain, and that's either pain in the moment or the anticipation of pain in the future. So a lot of us, we tend to resort to instant gratification. It's hard for us to delay gratification and wait for things that we want. So one of the problems I ran into over and over was I would have friends or family or someone like that ask me for a nutrition plan or a workout plan or anything along those lines. So I would spend a lot of time talking to them about what their goals were, what they were interested in the program, trying to write what I thought was the best program I could possibly write for them, and then explaining how to do everything with them. So in all, I would spend probably 3 to 5 hours per person. And then when I would check back in with them a day later or a week later or a month later to see how the program was going, most of them hadn't even started. And I'm sure you guys have gone through this process quite a bit. So what I realized is without some type of buy-in from the client, they're not going to be willing to make the hard decisions, make the changes consistently that they need to be able to kind of make the changes. So
what kind of hard buy-ins were you finding that were necessary for people to be like, yeah, let's get this rolling?
Yeah. So my favorite one was the cold shower test. Basically, I would say, yeah, I will write you a nutrition plan or an exercise plan, but first you have to take a cold shower. You have to spend at least 5 minutes in pure cold water, and you have to come back and you have to tell me how it is. And so based on that, I would so first of all, I would know if people were lying, because it's a very, if you've never taken a cold shower before, it's a very distinct experience. So yeah, so
if they came back and they were like, it was really cold, you'd be like, yeah, I don't think so, buddy.
Exactly. So it just kind of forces them, like, how bad do you actually want to make this change? Because when you're sitting in comfort in your living room, it's easy to say, yeah, hey, I want to make this change. I want to start eating right. I want to start exercising. But when you first put your foot in a freezing cold shower, it's like, whoa, how bad do I actually want this? So the people that were willing to actually go in and spend 5 minutes of their life being uncomfortable, they were much more likely to actually follow through with the rest of the program. So that was kind of a weeding out process, but it also created a little bit of buy-in, because who wants to take a 5-minute cold shower for no reason whatsoever?
Right.
So having done that and having felt like after doing that they earned the program, the exercise program or the diet program, then they were much more likely to at least take the initial steps and get the process rolling.
I think you bring up such a good point with when we're sitting in comfort and sitting, in our living room on our couch, and we think, oh, I should start working out. And especially at this time, this episode's coming out around Christmas and New Year's. And a lot of our listeners are probably spending time with family, gorging out on cookies. You're not having any cravings of things you shouldn't be eating. So that's when I think a lot of times we think, man, I should start working out. I should start eating better, because we're not uncomfortable in that moment. But like you said, everything changes the moment you have to get uncomfortable. And that's really cool that you take the hard buy-in is almost an activity. It's like, do you really want to change this badly that you would try something that you know is going to be uncomfortable?
Yeah, this kind of goes back to the point I was trying to make about delayed and instant gratification. So we live in such comfort, and then, like you said, around the holidays, we're gorging out and things like that. And we think, okay, I can do this now, and then later I will go on and I will exercise, or I will start eating better, or something like that. So we always kind of push the hard stuff off. So we live in comfort, and then we push the hard stuff off. However, what I try to get people to realize is that if you take a hot shower all the time, the hot shower just becomes average. It just kind of becomes your normal. If you take a cold shower for 5 minutes and then put hot water on for the last minute, that last minute is far more glorious than any other shower you will take. So basically what you are doing is you're switching your quote unquote normal from a state of comfort to a state of slight discomfort. Then instead of feeling like you're entitled to comfort and you have to almost like punish yourself with work or with exercise or whatever the case may be, you now feel like you now kind of crave that state of discomfort, and you feel like you have to earn the comfort of a hot shower, of a cheat meal, of whatever the case may be.
I think that's really important. That's really important because, like you're saying, it just shifts baseline. And throughout our culture, the baseline has been so skewed away from doing anything that's uncomfortable to instead trying to make things as absolutely comfortable as possible. Like that's the baseline. So anything that deviates from that, it usually registers as a deviation that's less than the baseline. Meaning if it's not absolutely comfortable as possible, oh, this is a bad thing. Or, oh, I'm not doing as well as I should be doing because I'm a little bit uncomfortable. And that's a really weird mindset. It's a really weird mindset to have adopted, societally, but that's what seems to have happened, aside from some outlier cases where you have groups of people that actually seek out discomfort, and lo and behold, those ones seem to be excelling, whether it's, the groups of men and women that are serving, like the Navy SEALs, the motto of embrace the suck, things like that. You have these really high level performers that adopt that mindset of something being uncomfortable is a really good thing and actually seeking that out. But everybody else seems to have shifted away from that. So I like that a lot. I think we should start adding that into our client consultations at MAS. You want to get on the schedule? Okay, cool. 5-minute cold shower and then call back, tell me how it was, and we'll get you scheduled up.
Well, remember at one point we did discuss just in one of our meetings when clients wanted us to help them be accountable for nutrition. Obviously, you and I are not trained in nutrition, but we will be an accountability partner. Just, hey, how's it going? Are you doing well? And one of the things we had mentioned was maybe we should have people food log for 3 days. And if you can't be accountable for what for what you're eating, maybe I shouldn't be the one that needs to be accountable. I'm not the one you should be reporting to. Maybe you need to report to yourself first, and then I can help fine tune. But yeah, it's a really great point that you brought up with the discomfort piece.
So talk to us then about kind of how you were starting to implement this with clients. You gave them the cold shower bit, and what was kind of the next steps that happened? You said compliance went up, but what were the changes you were seeing with the clients that you were working with?
I would say the biggest thing was they began taking more responsibility. I feel like one of the reasons people hire personal trainers, they feel like they can pass the responsibility off onto the trainer. And as a trainer perspective, you have to feel like you are responsible for the results of the client. But at the same time, you have to get your client to see that they're also very responsible for their results. So once they felt like they were responsible for their own results, I would try to get them to make one simple change. I felt like if they could at least make one simple change and stick with it consistently, it would be easier to then make a slightly more difficult change, and then a more difficult change after that and after that. So what I found was when people change their breakfast first, it kind of frames their mindset for the rest of the day. If people try to change their dinner first and eat kind of a not so healthy breakfast and not so healthy lunch, they're going to be far more likely to go off plan and eat a not so healthy dinner. So we always kind of like to start with a fresh start, and that's why we always try to start diets on Monday. That's why we go through New Year's resolutions. That's why on our birthdays we set goals for the rest of the year, because we feel like we're given a fresh start. So every day we're given a fresh start to kind of make the day the best that it can be. So by starting out by eating a good breakfast, it kind of frames the mindset for the rest of the day. After that, it becomes easier to transition into making the next change, which could be eating a different lunch, eating a different dinner, doing an exercise program or something like that. But at least getting them in the mindset that, hey, I'm the type of person that eats right. I'm the type of person that exercises. I'm the type of person who sticks to my goals and is capable of making this behavioral change.
So is that kind of in line with like the make your bed concept, where hey, if you can do this one thing right, or I get this one thing done during the day, now you've started your day getting something done. Now you've started your day doing something right. And that can, if nothing else goes right during the rest of your day, you at least know you did that one thing right. You at least know you got that one thing done. And then, but it also gives you the opportunity to kind of build off of that instead of starting from a deficit. Is that kind of the idea behind it?
Absolutely. So the reason I think that is so effective is it kind of goes into our self-image and the way that we see ourselves. So we will almost always behave in a way that's consistent with our self-image and our worldview. It basically determines what's easy and difficult for us, our habits, our behaviors, how other people respond to us. So the way I look at it is when you make your bed first thing in the morning, or when you eat a healthy breakfast, it changes your self-image enough for the rest of the day that you are able to then be more productive. You're able to then stick to healthier diets. If you oversleep, if you skip out on making your bed, if you eat the wrong things in the morning, it kind of frames your self-image in a way that is detrimental to the goals that you're trying to achieve and the behavioral change that you're trying to make.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I see that too. I mean, I've never thought of it that way, but you kind of reconfirm to yourself who you think you are. Like if you're someone that always gives in to every craving, you're like, yeah, I'm always good except for this. And so and every time that except comes up, then you give into it. And it is really interesting, and you see that through, people that cancel consistently on their appointments, people that cancel on themselves consistently on their appointments, or miss their workouts, or change their diet. So it is really interesting, and it's curious that you said that, because I've never heard that been said before, but I've seen it in action. You know what I'm saying? So how do you deal with that? How do you help someone with that? Is it you just start with an activity in the day and you can help someone be like, I'm the type of person that stands up for my goals, and I'm the type of you know what I'm saying? Like, how can do you explicitly tell that to your clients, or do you just start with actions and then they can start seeing that?
I usually just start with actions. I try to get them to make an action. And so one of the things we talked about in school in regards to behavioral change is the typical way of going about behavioral change is something called the information deficit model. which means you're acting in a way you don't want to act because you have faulty information. And if I correct your information, then you will behave differently. The common example with this is people who smoke cigarettes, and for years they had campaigns talking about how cigarettes cause lung cancer. However, almost no one stopped smoking based on these campaigns. So what they found is the information deficit model is severely lacking. It doesn't take into account things like people's attitudes, values, and preferences. It doesn't take into account social norms. It doesn't take into account their worldview or self-image, their perceived efficacy, or the belief that their actions matter in the long run and the short run. And it doesn't take into account perceived behavioral control, whether they actually have the ability to control the behavior relative to the change that they're trying to make. So one of the things I would do is try to present the behavioral change not just using the information deficit model, but with all these other components as well, talking about why changing your breakfast or why making your bed first thing in the morning kind of resets your self-image, which basically controls your behaviors for the rest of the day, and getting them to see it, and then getting them to try it once for themselves, and then getting them to reflect back on and say, yeah, you know what, all I had to do was make my bed that one time, and all of a sudden I ate a better breakfast, and that led to this, and that led to this, and that led to this. And all of a sudden they realized that there was this one little habit that kind of controlled their behavior and their habits for the rest of the day. So that's kind of the one that we would focus on, and work on getting very consistent at getting that habit down.
Yeah, I think we hear all the time. I mean, everyone hears this all the time. Coffee drinkers, if they miss their habit of having coffee, it's like their whole day is thrown off. Or, someone that has a weird morning. They're like, oh my gosh, I had a weird morning, so now my day is whacked out. And it's like, really? That one 15-minute thing in the morning threw you off for the day? But apparently, and I've felt it too, when you have like the rockin' morning, and even if it was like 10-15 minutes, you're like on for the rest of the day. And I think a part of that is, what I kind of am thinking about, it's almost like, yeah, if I could be responsible for this moment in my morning or my life, then heck yeah, I could be responsible for what I choose for lunch, or if I show up for my appointment for working out, or, all the other decisions that I make throughout the rest of the day.
Well, I think and that's such a great point. And Tony, the word that you said that really stuck out to me was habit. And I think that's a really important word. I know that you and I have discussed the book, The Power of Habit, and just the influence that has had with both of us, and the way we view things, and how we try to set our days up in accordance with that. But I think a lot of times individuals have habits that they don't even realize that they have, and they have these things, these actions have become so habitual that it's almost like, well, this is the only way that I can run my day. This is the only way that I can start my day. This is the only way, and it can be very good and it can be very bad. We can talk all different kinds of extremes where I just flat out can't wake up before 10 a.m. Is something like that, or are you just in the habit of going to sleep really late? One of the two. Or on the other extreme, maybe something really good. You're in the habit of meditating every day, or whatever. And so you have these habits that you do that you just can't envision your life being without. I'm sure you kind of ran across situations like that when talking with people, and especially when talking about compliance, like, hey, these are some changes we need to make. How did you go about bringing this topic up and addressing these concerns with people? Because they're very valid concerns. People have built their entire existence around doing these same things every single day, and they are so strongly ingrained within their daily life. How do you go about addressing these things and saying, hey, you know what, those things that you think are permanent, they're actually quite changeable? This is how we have to go about doing it.
Yeah, so I would always start by asking, okay, what do you want to change, and why do you want to change it? The why is critical, because that gets to the root cause of the pain. And if they're not willing to admit that they want to change because they have pain, then they're just not psychologically ready to buy in and make the change. They have to realize that they can't continue living their current lifestyle and make changes or reach goals or do things that they're trying to do. So I would start by figuring out what's causing pain in their life, and then we would go through and together we would figure out what factors are likely contributing to that. And then I'd say, okay, out of these, which are you willing to change? Which do you think would be easiest to change? Which are you willing to change? And which do you think you could change and stick with the change for the next week? So we wouldn't make it like some big lifetime change. We'd just say, okay, for the next week, do you think you'll be able to just make your bed in the morning or something like that? And for me, the whole time I'd have to keep the bigger picture vision in mind of where we're ultimately trying to get to, and what habit can lead to the next habit, can lead to the next habit, and ultimately change the habit that we're really trying to make. But if someone's eating poor food and not getting great sleep, if they're smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol consistently and doing things like that, trying to change too much or trying to change the wrong thing first can cause the whole change effort to collapse. So what you have to do is slowly change the way they see themselves by making one change at a time and making sure that they notice the difference in how they feel or how they perform or how they look based on just making that one change, and make sure they're ready to make the next change before you lead them into that.
So what do you think is going on? I don't know if you studied this or you just have a hypothesis, but what do you think goes on with this New Year's resolution thing? Because I think in the New Year's resolutions, we're given like the freshest of the fresh start, and we all see it. I mean, we're all gym people, so we're in the gym, and January it's packed. February it's medium. March it's dead. And then there's a couple people that trickle back in before spring break. But my hypothesis is that they're doing exactly what you just said. They're changing too much too soon. It's like, I'm going to work out perfect. I'm going to eat perfect. I'm going to sleep all the time. And I'm not going to drink any alcohol, even though I like to when I socialize with my friends. And everything of my life is going to be perfect. And I think that is kind of the derailing factor of the New Year's resolution. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but it also makes it so that the experience is very, very short-lived. I mean, if we think about exercise and nutrition and healthy habits needing to last our entire life, 2 months is like nothing. So what are your thoughts on that? You think it's the same as my hypothesis, like just too much, or what's going on?
I think it's too much. I think it comes back to that self-image idea we talked about earlier. So we all have the self-image or the picture of ourselves in our head, and we almost always behave consistently with that. If you see yourself as a person who doesn't like socializing with other people and you go to a social event, you're just not going to socialize with other people, because doing so would be counter to the way that you see yourself and the way you perceive the world. So what I think most people do with their New Year's resolution is try to use willpower and force to kind of push themselves in a direction that is not congruent with their self-image. This results in having to work extremely hard to maintain the changes rather than just the changes being natural and feeling comfortable. So if you're the type of person who likes to exercise and likes to work out and sees yourself as a person who likes to work out, then going to the gym and starting a new exercise program is going to be incredibly easy. If you see yourself as the type of person who doesn't like exercise and can't stick to new exercise programs, then you're going to have to consistently be using willpower to maintain the changes. So what I think would be a better option is to start focusing on how you change your self-image, how you change the way you see yourself, how you change the way you see the world. And by doing so, you will naturally start to change your behaviors. So one example I like to use is the idea of playing sports. Specifically, imagine yourself playing hockey. You have ice skates on, you have a stick, you're hitting the puck toward the goal, you're playing hockey. All of a sudden, you realize that not everyone is wearing ice skates. Some people are wearing sneakers, and then all of a sudden you realize you're wearing sneakers. All of a sudden you realize you're outside on the grass. You still have a stick, and you're still trying to hit, instead of a puck, you're trying to hit a ball, and all of a sudden you realize you're playing field hockey and not ice hockey. all of a sudden you're going to start behaving differently. You're going to follow the rules of field hockey rather than ice hockey. Your movements, your strategy, everything about it is going to change, not because you changed as a person, but because the environment that you see has changed. And then imagine from field hockey, all of a sudden the ball's starting to get bigger and people are starting to kick the ball and no one has sticks anymore, and you realize you're playing soccer. You're not going to try to run around and hit the ball with the stick. You're going to start kicking it because you realize you're playing soccer. So how this transitions into behavioral change is we all act according to how we see the world and see ourselves.
Does this also speak to the idea of having a support team around you, putting yourself in an environment where you know you can succeed, trying to surround yourself with people who are either already accomplished a goal that you're trying to accomplish or are on the same path that you're trying to accomplish? Because I think sometimes issues that Julie and I have ran into in the past is we'll have people come in and sometimes it'll be like a couple, like a husband-wife combo where, one person really wants to change and the other person is not that interested in changing. And so because they don't have that support, that almost makes it difficult for both of them to change. So finding people who can support you, and who are on the same journey as you, who have been through the same struggles as you, what kind of importance does that play into people succeeding and actually changing their behaviors?
Yeah, so this goes into social norms, and the way you see kind of everyone else's behavior will influence your own personal behavior. So if you believe it's normal to exercise 3 to 4 days a week, to eat healthy foods, to only eat a cheat meal on the weekends, if you believe that's normal just because that's what you are exposed to on a regular basis, then without questioning it, you're just going to naturally follow suit, or at least trend in that direction. If you think it's normal to sit on the couch most of the day and binge watch Netflix every night, or to play video games, or to get fast food or order pizza for dinner most nights, then you're just naturally going to trend in that direction. So it really all comes down to what the people around you are doing and what you perceive as normal based on what they're doing.
So how do you help people with that? Because you can't tell a client, you need to divorce your significant other because they're holding you back. Like, how do you have those conversations? What kind of things did you talk about with your clients to help them change what they saw as normal?
Basically, they have to sit down and be willing to have a conversation with their significant other. And they have to explain what they're trying to achieve and why they're trying to achieve it. And their significant other has to see how their support is beneficial to that process. They have to be on board with that. If they can't get on board with that, then it's just going to be extremely difficult to change. And so you got to think, why is someone not willing to support their significant other in making a behavioral change? Basically just trying to get them both on the same page. And even if the significant other isn't 100% compliant, if they're at least willing to support and do what they can to help the other person in their change goal.
Yeah, I think one thing that's been really helpful for me to make change, the kind of way that I kind of go about my changes, every couple months when I learn about something new, I'll like text Charlie, or I see Charlie all the time, and I'm like, I'm going to try the detox, and one thing that's really helpful for me, and if you're a significant other and your spouse is going through big changes, the best thing that he says to me is, can I do it? Or can I try it? Or can I do parts of that? And he might not be interested in it. I might be doing it because I'm feeling like crap, or I'm getting headaches, or I'm feeling weird, and I think that if you have a significant other that's, expressing the desire to change, just like pitch in and feel like, it's not a jab against you. It's the own person facing their own challenges, and saying, I'm going to try something. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm going to try it, and helping them realize that they're capable of changing and trying. And I feel that firsthand, just how easy it is for me to implement change, because I've got a support system, and I know that I'm lucky that I have that. But I think that the more education that goes into that, and awareness of how easy it is to change when you got the support. I think you can certainly do it on your own if you've got enough willpower, but just as you were kind of mentioning, one of the issues is if you're doing things with just willpower and force, it's very difficult to sustain. So having that support system, or maybe finding others in your life that you can lean on for that piece of support, would be really helpful.
Yeah, no, I would definitely have to agree. Now, Tony, talk to us about some things that you think our listeners can implement if they feel like maybe the social norms of the environment that they're in are not in line with what they think they need to be accomplishing, and maybe they do have a significant other, maybe they're single, but either way they feel like those around them are not that interested in changing. Would you suggest, is this one of the real actually benefits of something like social media, where you can connect with other people who are, whether it's like Facebook groups or something like that, or meetups, places where people are going through similar things?
Yeah, social media, that's exactly what I was going to suggest. We tend to not really put a whole lot of thought into the people that we follow on social media. It's almost like we just follow more and more people just because it's convenient or we feel obligated to. So what you can do is start, if you notice there are people on social media that are consistently posting content that puts you in a negative mood, or drives you to somehow not eat the foods that you want to eat because they're you see them partying or posting pictures of their food or whatever the case is, just unfollow them. Just start to manipulate the group that you are following to only see content that is reinforcing to your goals. So follow people who like exercise, who are posting things about what they're exercising or what they're doing as far as exercise. And it doesn't have to be the fitness models and people like that, but find someone who is inspiring. Find someone who's just in arm reach ahead of you, who you can kind of follow in their coattails and model your approach after. That just kind of creates your own mini little world on social media of people you can follow and how you can go about progressing toward your goals.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just for our listeners, just so you know, you don't have to actually unfriend people or unfollow. You can you can mute them, or you can say, I don't want to see their content show up in my feed anymore. So then you actually have to actively search them out to see what's going on. So I love that advice, because I know that I've done that a ton with my feed, both on Instagram and Facebook. And so all right, somebody's just posting negative stuff. I don't want to see this anymore. Or, they're posting unhealthy stuff. I really don't want to see that anymore. And so I will absolutely mute people. I'll absolutely unfollow people, not unfollow, but make it so they don't show up in my feed anymore. I do that all the time, and it actually makes looking at my feed like a very uplifting thing, as opposed to a real downer.
So are the only people in your feed just me and Tony?
Basically, yeah.
All right, we made it.
And dog videos.
And dog videos.
Can't beat dog videos.
So the other thing that I've noticed with myself, and people come up to me and talk to me about this a lot, I think books help too. It's just reading the words of other people that have been successful, or view the world more like maybe you would like to start viewing the world. So I think just that exposure. I mean, I think social media is a better way to see it all the time, because we're always on there anyways. So if we can filter our exposure to that, that's cool. And I think books might be a cool way to do it too, just because it puts you, it's almost like you're now a friend with the author. Like you kind of are getting a glimpse into their thoughts, and I think that can help us change how we think, just because I know I've read books sometimes and I think of things that I'm like, I never viewed it that way. So clearly that's starting to change my psychology around the topic.
Yeah, kind of going off that idea, when we make too many decisions, or when we force ourselves to make too many decisions, we experience something called decision fatigue, which means as our day goes on, or the more decisions we make, we tend to make worse and worse decisions. So one thing I've been implementing lately is kind of picturing almost an ideal version of myself, or kind of the person I want to be a year from now, and thinking, okay, what does this person do? What does this version of Tony do? And so instead of having to consciously make all the decisions myself, I just picture what this person does and try to model them. So basically I've created my own ideal guide, or my own ideal person that can lead me through this change based on who I want to be a year from now.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think that's such applicable advice, because so often we are looking at what are we trying to become. So it's like we're looking at something that we feel we're not. And it's like, oh, we have to, completely change ourselves in order to get to this thing that we're deeming either ideal or closer to ideal. But what you're saying is, no, this person is me. Like, what does this version of me do that the current version is not doing? And I just got to be that version of me. I like that idea a lot. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up because something, especially with social media and Instagram becoming big, is like I'm in love with those shirts that have like stupid words on it, like boss. Like I'm like, heck yeah, I'm a boss, or like hashtag awesome or famous, or like I just love all those things because I think that the more that you're in your mind about who you are and who you would like to be, even if you feel like maybe today I'm not there, but I behave like I'm there. That's how the behaviors, that's how you get to the place you want to be. So I remember when things like that came out, I thought that's kind of tacky. And I'm like, wait, I'm buying them all. Like, actually, I'm the #1 consumer of those kind of clothes. I mean, what do I have on today? Strong is beautiful. And I love that because like, that's what I believe. And even though every day I don't feel strong, like, I remember this is how I am. This is me. This is Julie. So I kind of you look at my posts, it's all like hashtag because I'm hashtagging myself. This is who I am.
I love it. Love that.
So make up your hashtags.
Right? Make up your life hashtag. I love that. So I want you to expand on one other thing that you've brought up a number of times now, and I want you to kind of tie it all together with everything we've talked about so far. Because to recap, the big points that I've gotten so far is first and foremost, is something has to be painful enough for somebody in order for them to change. Okay. Secondly, they have to have some skin in the game. They have to have some buy-in, kind of like that 5-minute cold shower that you were talking about. Okay. So the idea of just getting something for free, we're not seeing commitment with that. So we got to see some buy-in, and then you have to start implementing that initial habit or that initial act during the day that allows you to change how you're viewing yourself. You start thinking about yourself in a different manner because of that habit that you instill, whether it's eating the healthy breakfast, whether it's making your bed, whether it's exercising first thing in the morning. Now you've kind of set yourself up to think of yourself in that manner for the rest of that day, okay? And then surrounding yourself with people who are on a similar path or who can support you with that. So we got all that going on, which I think is all super applicable stuff. But the thing that you've brought up a number of times now and what your new book is largely about, and I want you to kind of tie it all together with this, is this idea of worldview and how you kind of view the world. And so how does that go along with behavior change and what people need to start doing right now in order to make 2019 the year where they are changing their self, they are changing their actions, and they're actually accomplishing the goals that they set for themselves?
When it comes to worldviews, there are kind of two ways of seeing the world. One is by focusing on things that you can control, factors such as the time of day you wake up, what you eat for breakfast, kind of your overall mood and outlook toward things. And the other is focusing on things you can't control, such as your genetics, such as your boss, or certain things like that. By focusing on things that you can control, it empowers you to take responsibility for your daily actions and for the outcome of your actions. By focusing on things you can't control, it kind of creates this victim mindset, or this thought that you can't achieve what you want because of your genetics, or because of your boss, or because of X, Y, and Z, which, although they may not be helping your goal, it just doesn't make sense to focus on them at all, because there's nothing you can do about them. You can't control them. So by focusing on things that you can control, it empowers you to make changes by giving you resiliency, by allowing you to, if you do make a mistake, realize you've made a mistake and be able to get back on track. A lot of people, if they mess up their breakfast, or if they mess up a meal early in the week, it will kind of throw them off for the whole week. And that's just kind of focusing on things you can't control. If you ate a bad meal yesterday, that shouldn't affect what you eat today, because you can't control what you ate yesterday. However, you can control what you eat today, what you eat tomorrow. You can control what time you wake up. You can control whether you go do your exercise program and whether you put your effort into it or not. So by focusing on what you can control, it brings you back to this feeling of control, which is empowering, which gets you to buy in, which gets you to, even if you make a mistake, you say, okay, I made a mistake, but now I can go back and I can, make the next meal better, and I can make the next meal better, and just kind of get this momentum back.
Yeah, I think you said that really nicely, where either way it could be cyclic. If you're always focusing on the things you can control, then you always feel that I can control this variable and it can lead me to a place that I want to be. If you always are focusing on those uncontrollables, then it also keeps teaching you the story that I can't control this, I can't change this, and thus I cannot make change in this way. And I think that kind of goes back into that life story, or your personal view of yourself that we were just talking about. It's like we reconfirm who we are every moment of the day, and if we keep viewing ourselves as, I'm a changeable human, I can take charge of the things I want to happen in my life, then that's what we'll keep doing. And the more that we can avoid not focusing on the unchangeables, then the more that we keep teaching ourselves, heck yeah, rockstar, I can do this. I can change the things I want to change. So I think that was a really nice add in there.
So for our listeners, to kind of recap the whole thing, first and foremost, if you're looking to make change, you got to figure out why. Why is this important enough? Where does it hurt enough for you to actually make this change? Because if there's no pain, there's not going to be any change. And if there's no emotional pain, it's not going to matter enough to you to make the change. Okay, that's number one. Number two, again, you have to have skin in the game. You have to have some buy-in. You can't do the things that are free. You can't do the things that are easy. You have to have some skin in the game, whether it's paying money, whether it's doing something uncomfortable, whether it's putting yourself out there. All those things have to be done. Thirdly, you have to start your day on the right foot. You have to start your day with the habits that will instill success, okay? Whether that's making your bed, eating breakfast, exercising right away, whatever it is you do in the morning time to get your day going, you have to start to that. You have to commit to that. You have to prioritize that, and then let the rest of your day roll from there. You have to put yourself in the environment that you are surrounded by people that will uplift you, that will support you, that will help you get towards your goals. And this is one, like we talked about, one of the beautiful things about social media and how you can use this tool to connect with people that are like-minded and that can help support you on your journey and getting those habits in place and keeping those habits in place. And then ultimately, you have to focus on the things that you can control, because there's so much that goes on in your life that you flat out cannot control. And if you're worried about that, you are missing your opportunity, because your opportunity lies in the things that you can control. So you need to control those controllables. And that's a really, really big thing. So thank you so much for bringing up those points. That was awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
So we listed the things that our listeners need to do, okay? How can our listeners connect with you to kind of find out more about this, to find out more about, the second book that's coming out and everything like that? Where can they connect with you?
So my second book is called Lead to Unite. And so you just go to the website, leadtounite.com. I can also be emailed at katestony@gmail.com.
So our final question that we wrap up with is we ask all our guests this: what is your definition of health?
My definition of health is basically resiliency. Being able to withstand the stressors in our life and still being able to get done what you need to get done, be able to still perform highly, be able to still function. And we've talked about the idea of kind of high performance fragility, where a lot of people are pursuing high performance at the expense of resiliency, meaning that, they're able to perform highly, but if a stressor comes along, it throws them off. If they have to eat the wrong food, it throws them off. And basically what they're trying to do is control the world, the entire world, and control the things that aren't necessarily controllable, which creates, like I just said, high performance fragility. So we've talked about the concept of anti-fragility, where basically if things get hectic, or if there's stress, or if there's pressure, you actually get stronger and you get more resilient. So try to kind of cultivate that in your eating and in your exercise plan and in your mindset, so that you don't need everything to be perfect to be able to be healthy and perform at a high level.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. That idea of resiliency, that idea of anti-fragility, I think is a really important thing. And like you were noting, it's often so missed, especially in today's like biohacking, health conscious culture, where we're trying to eliminate any single inflammatory thing that could be out there, food wise, emotional wise, chemically. We're trying to eliminate it all, and that's how we're going to be healthy. It's like, really? Or are you just putting yourself in a bubble?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stress is basically a guarantee in life. And so our physiological and our psychological response to stress is determined by how we view stress. So if we view stress as being invigorating and enlivening and helps us get stuff done and thrive, then we have a much more beneficial physiological and psychological response to the stress. If we see stress, or if we see, quote unquote bad foods or things like that as just these horrible things that have to be avoided at all costs, then all of a sudden when a little bit of stress comes into our life, we respond far less favorably. We have a huge stress response. We can have an emotional meltdown just because we stress about stress, just because we stress about these things that we're actually not able to control.
Right on. Well, hey, again, thank you so much. Really appreciate your insights, and I know that this content will be super valuable to all of our listeners who are ready to kick off the new year with, some behavioral changes that they're trying to make, setting some goals, and just dominating those goals in 2019. So thank you for your time and your expertise.
Absolutely. Be free, guys.
Right on. So for our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We always appreciate the time that you spend with us and so greatly enjoy spreading these messages on how you can improve your health, how you can think about exercise differently, and how you can lead a healthier life with regular, consistent exercise. But my question for you is, who do you know that needs to hear this content? Who do you know that's trying to implement some behavioral changes, or has been trying to implement behavioral changes for quite some time and has not gotten over the hump with it? Feel free to share this content with them and help them get past that hump. That can be a tremendous holiday gift that you're able to share with them by giving them the gift of this content. And while you're at it, if you wouldn't mind, head on over to iTunes, leave us a rating and review. We so greatly appreciate that. Well, have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.